Imagine standing outside an 80,000-seat stadium.
Yeah.
The air is completely still. The streets are unusually quiet thanks to those early pandemic lockdowns.
Right, yeah. Total ghost town.
Exactly. And while the rest of the world is just, paralyzed with uncertainty, you are spending your days right outside those towering stadium walls, kicking a football alone. Thousands of times, just over and over.
It's just you, the ball, and the concrete.
Yeah, and you aren't training for a team. You're trying to rebuild your battered body and, honestly, your entire life from scratch.
It is such a stark, powerful visual. I mean, when you really picture it, stripping away all the noise, the expectations, the audience, there's this raw, almost meditative repetition to, like, putting yourself back together in the shadow of something that massive.
So today, we are pulling back the curtain on that exact scene. We're taking a deep dive into a profoundly personal chapter from David Ward's working draft memoir, The Geography of a Life.
And it's a fascinating chapter.
It really is. But what makes this exploration so compelling for you listening today is that we aren't just relying on his written memories. We actually have a fascinating data set to layer over the text, which is his actual Google Takeout music library metadata.
Yes, the metadata really grounds the whole thing in reality.
Completely. We are zooming in on a very specific window, his time in Barcelona, covering March and April of 2021. And our mission today is to figure out how we score the most pivotal chapters of our lives. How a specific place, a handful of strangers, and a meticulously curated playlist can act as the scaffolding for total personal reinvention.
Yeah, and to understand why this Barcelona era was so transformative, we really have to look at the momentum of his life leading up to that empty stadium.
Which, by the way, is the new Camp Nou, right?
Yeah.
The home of Lionel Messi.
Exactly. But David wasn't there as a tourist. He was running from a profound kind of burnout.
Let's talk about that burnout, because it wasn't just your standard office fatigue. For years, he was an engineer at Eli Lilly.
Right, big pharma.
Huge pharma. And for anyone who hasn't worked in the pharmaceutical industry, that is a high-pressure, incredibly rigid environment. I mean, if a process isn't documented perfectly, it legally did not happen.
It's intense. The regulatory burden is just massive.
Right. The rules kept shifting, the corporate pressure was immense,
Right.
and the cognitive load was just totally unsustainable. So he leaves.
He pulls the ripcord.
He does. But his escape plan is kind of brutal. He dives into the grueling Irish bar circuit in Belgium and then finds himself in Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands, making something absurd like €2.50 an hour.
Surviving on single sausage rolls for breakfast.
Yeah, it's crazy. He essentially swung the pendulum from extreme corporate regulation to extreme physical and financial precarity. Leaving the corporate world wasn't failure in his eyes, though it was a necessary ejection from an environment that was slowly erasing his identity.
That makes sense. Yeah, so Belgium gave him resilience. The Canaries taught him this sort of bare-bones resourcefulness. But you can only run on fumes for so long, By the time he lands in Spain in early 2021, the tank is completely empty. He requires a fundamental reset.
Which brings us back to that concrete outside Camp Nou and the daily ritual. Every single morning, he walks to the pitch at Punta Gaviota.
He's not working a traditional job anymore.
Right. He is trading crypto, riding those wild market waves of early 2021, channeling the energy of Lionel Messi and doing keepy-uppies.
Thousands of them.
Yes, and we need to clarify why this specific physical motion mattered. Because David grew up in Cork, playing Gaelic football.
That is a crucial detail for understanding his physical state. For those who don't know, Gaelic football is a punishing sport.
Oh, absolutely brutal.
It's this hybrid of soccer and rugby played at breakneck speed, often with devastating impacts. And you are catching, kicking, and tackling without the padding you see in American football.
Yeah, just raw impact.
Exactly. Decades of that will absolutely shred a person's joints.
So his ankles are damaged, his feet are wrecked. He isn't out there doing thousands of keepy-uppies to get his cardio up. He is trying to teach his battered nervous system a completely new way to move. He is trying to get, looser.
And his approach to this reveals a really unconventional philosophy about the concept of recovery itself.
How so?
Well, culturally, we tend to frame recovery as an intervention. It's the hospital visit, the rehab center, the dramatic rock bottom where the state or your family has to step in to save you.
Right, there's always a crisis moment.
Yeah, But David rejects that entirely. He decides to orchestrate his own recovery on his own terms before the catastrophic collapse can happen.
That takes a lot of self-awareness.
It does. And the fact that the stadium next to him is empty due to the pandemic, it isn't a tragic detail to him. It's an invitation. The 80,000 empty seats mean the holy ground of football is suddenly available to a single guy trying to heal his ankles.
I hear that, and it's a beautiful image, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Isn't there a massive danger in this kind of beautiful isolation? It sounds a bit like a musician who locks themselves in a room, obsessing over the tension of their guitar strings, endlessly tuning the instrument, but refusing to ever actually play a gig. If you curate your recovery too perfectly, you might just get stuck in it.
Oh, absolutely. Isolation without a mechanism for measurement can definitely become a trap. You can lose your grip on reality.
Exactly.
But David wasn't just sitting in silence, hiding from the world. He was actively programming his brain for the next phase. And more importantly, he was meticulously tracking that process.
Doing the music.
Right. He built an entire architecture of sound around his recovery, capturing his exact emotional momentum in raw data.
And this is where the story shifts from a traditional memoir into something totally unique. I mean, how does someone track their own internal tuning process? Through their Spotify and YouTube metadata.
The Google Takeout Archive provides an incredibly objective look at his mental state. It's fascinating. When we look at the data spanning from 2019 to 2024, there are over 2,000 dated track adds to his music library.
That's a lot of data points.
It is, but the towering, undeniable peak of that data is 2021. Nearly 900 tracks were added in that single year.
900 tracks. I mean, that is an unbelievable volume of music to actively discover, sort, and save in a 12-month window.
The volume tells us that the soundtrack was at its loudest exactly when his internal world was undergoing the most rapid renovations. He is moving from Brussels to Amsterdam, down to Barcelona, and eventually toward Rome.
So he's constantly in motion.
Right, and he isn't just letting algorithms wash over him. He is functioning as an archivist. The data shows he constructed 49 distinct playlists during this period.
Wow, 49.
Yeah, he was organizing his reality, era by era, mood by mood.
Well, let's look closely at what he actually put into the Barcelona playlist, because it gives us the sonic blueprint of a man physically loosening up and psychologically letting go. It's a 28-track list.
It's a very specific vibe.
It really is. Let's look at the specific artists and the tone of those tracks. You have Sampa the Great, specifically the track Freedom. Now, imagine the sheer weight of what he had just walked away from.
The FDA compliance at Eli Lilly?
Yes. The grueling pub shifts, the expectations of his family legacy back in Cork. Hearing the expansive, unburdened hip-hop of Sampa the Great, it is the audio equivalent of a massive, full-body exhale.
It really is the sound of dropping armor you didn't even realize you were wearing.
Beautifully put. And then contrast that with another track on the list, Kukuroka's Abusey Junction.
Oh, that track is incredible.
So good, right? It is this deeply patient, smooth, brass-heavy groove. Think about the mechanics of doing thousands of keepy-uppies by the Mediterranean Sea.
You cannot muscle your way through that.
Exactly. You have to find a rhythm. The tempo of that Kukuroka track is exactly what a damaged, rigid body needs to hear in order to loosen up. It doesn't rush you.
But the playlist isn't just a spa soundtrack either. He has Pearl Jam's Do the Evolution and Justice's DANCE sitting right there in the same collection.
Talk about a pivot.
Yeah, those tracks are electric, chaotic, and aggressive. Mixing in 90s grunge with heavy French electronic dance music, it perfectly mirrors the internal chaos of a person who is actively mutating into a new version of themselves.
Right. It's not all just peaceful healing. There's friction.
Totally. And the sheer density of genres, you've got alt-hip-hop, Britpop, electronic. It makes this look less like a casual listening list and more like a producer's reference shelf. He is using music to categorize information.
And we have to connect this habit to what he does later in his career, because this is wild. The man curating these hyper-specific playlists in a Barcelona apartment is the same man who later builds complex artificial intelligence systems.
Yes, it's all connected.
Like his work with Brehan AI and the system he calls Davidos. Let's break that down for a second, because it's a huge leap from Spotify playlists to AI.
It sounds like a leap, but the underlying logic is the same.
Right. Davidos is essentially a personalized digital architecture he built to organize his own memories, knowledge, and research into what he calls governed knowledge zones. Basically, it's a highly structured digital filing cabinet for his brain.
The instinct is identical. Whether he is organizing his emotional state through MP3 metadata in 2021 or organizing corporate knowledge through machine learning in 2024, the archivist and the selector are the exact same person. Spain is where he practiced the skill of categorization on himself.
That is so profound. But as fascinating as the data is, a perfectly curated digital world and a lonely football pitch can only take a person so far.
Very true.
The real pivot in Barcelona happens when the outside world intrudes. Because geography doesn't change you. The people in that geography change you.
And the first of those people is Luisa. She is a Colombian woman he met back in Brussels, and they navigated the journey south together.
Right, they had that whole Amsterdam chapter.
Yeah, they had spent time wandering through the fog in Amsterdam during peak lockdowns, experiencing this weird, quiet intimacy in a continent that was completely shut down. By the time they reach Barcelona, she is the emotional anchor of his life.
And what I find so striking about Louisa's presence in the memoir isn't just the romance of it, it's the stark mirror she holds up to him.
Oh, definitely. When you are living in close quarters during a pandemic, your daily habits are just magnified. Through his relationship with Luisa, David discovers a very dangerous blind spot in his own psychology.
The realization about the drinking?
Yes, he realizes that he associates the feeling of being in love with the feeling of drinking alcohol.
Which, makes total sense when you think about his background. If your social life, your escapes, and your early romances all revolve around pub culture, the dopamine hit of the romance gets completely entangled with the dopamine hit of the drink.
It's a conditioned response. He recognizes that when he is happy with her, he starts chasing that high too aggressively with alcohol. The lines blur between his affection for the person and the chemical effect of the drink.
Discovering that about yourself has got to be painful.
It is, but what he does next is remarkable. He draws a hard boundary. Because of that realization in Spain, every romantic relationship he has had since then has been completely sober.
Wow.
He chose to protect the authenticity of his feelings by removing the chemical interference entirely.
That is massive growth.
Yeah.
So he's making these huge internal breakthroughs. But meanwhile, the external reality of their Barcelona apartment is almost too bizarre to be real.
It is honestly surreal.
We have to talk about their neighbor. Because the archive introduces us to Angel Gallardo.
A literal legend.
Let me set the scene for you listening right now, because you cannot invent this stuff.
Yeah.
You have David and Luisa, these two young wanderers, trying to figure out their lives in a lockdown world. And right next door is Angel Gallardo, an 84-year-old European Tour golf legend.
Just living his life.
Right. They literally spend their time on the balcony, and this octogenarian is handing them plates of melted Swiss raclette cheese over the railing.
While showing off his PGA Tour card, photos of himself golfing with the legendary Seb Ballesteros, and talking about a personal collection of 5,000 neckties.
5,000 ties. It is incredibly surreal.
It is wonderfully absurd. But Gallardo serves a critical structural purpose in David's life. He isn't just a quirky character providing comic relief and good cheese. He is the geographical bridge.
How so?
Well, Gallardo had spent decades in the Alps, and he casually tells David that the Valais region in Switzerland is, quote, heaven on earth.
Which is wild because David is so focused on his keepy-uppies, the crypto markets, and Luisa, he has no idea that Gallardo is holding the map to his future.
A seed is planted on that balcony. The man doing rehab outside Camp Nou is getting his next set of coordinates from a retired golf pro. Years later, David will move to Switzerland, take a major job in the Valais region, and eventually create an entire venture called Alex Wenger Golf.
It's all connected.
Gallardo handed him the blueprint over a plate of melted cheese.
Okay, so Gallardo gives him the ultimate destination. But knowing where to go is very different from knowing how to survive once you get there.
Exactly.
Which brings us to another figure in Spain, a friend we only know from the text as Blue Eyes.
Blue Eyes is a phenomenal presence in this chapter. There is no mentor-student power dynamic here. They operate as absolute equals.
There is a fantastic scene in the memoir where David and Blue Eyes are sitting outside a Spanish caravan. They have beers in hand, and they are watching a massive outdoor screen showing a Manchester United versus Liverpool game.
Right, and the crowd trouble in the stadium gets so severe that the game is actually abandoned.
Yeah, but David and Blue Eyes don't move. They just sit there in the glow of the screen talking about the future. Blue Eyes tells David to look east. He's referring to Russia, but more broadly, he's talking about the digital frontier.
Blue Eyes was one of those rare people who saw the future of technology before the rest of us did.
He told David that the smartphone in his pocket wasn't just a communication device. It was a weapon, a passport, a surveillance machine.
He possessed a terrifying clarity about where the world was heading. And he applied that same clarity to David. By absolute coincidence, they happened to be staying at a hotel associated with Lionel Messi. And this is where the thematic core of the entire Barcelona chapter just locks into place.
The Messi standard.
Yes. Blue Eyes points to Messi not as a celebrity, but as an ideology. He calls it the standard.
Let's unpack that because it's such a cool concept.
So Messi has performed at an impossibly high level for 20 years. He has made absolute world-bending excellence look ordinary week after week. Blue Eyes challenges David to demand that same standard of himself in his own life.
Not for the money.
No, he tells him that you don't pursue excellence for the money or the titles or the corporate praise. You do it out of pure, uncompromising respect for the craft itself, whether you are validating massive pharmaceutical systems or building artificial intelligence or just trying to be a decent friend.
I love this concept so much. Think about the first time you see a truly masterful Michelin star chef properly chop an onion.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. If you spent your whole life watching people just hack away at vegetables in a home kitchen, you don't know any better. You think hacking is just how it's done. But the second you stand in a professional kitchen and watch a master execute that basic, mundane task with terrifying, effortless precision, something in your brain snaps.
The standard has been revealed to you.
Yes, you can never unknow it. And from that day forward, even if you are just cooking for yourself on a random Tuesday, you can never justify doing it poorly again. Blue Eyes showed David the onion.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. Blue Eyes didn't hand him a startup idea or a networking contact. He handed him a standard of execution. And their dynamic was incredibly intense. The memoir describes a memory of Blue Eyes crying in the rain at a place called Castel de Fels.
It's a very poignant image. It's the moment David realizes the nature of their friendship. They are meant to run alongside each other, challenging and pushing each other to their limits, but their paths are not meant to merge.
You meet people who upgrade your internal software, and then you have to part ways to actually build something with it.
Man, that hits hard. So look at the inventory of what Barcelona accomplished. David arrived entirely depleted. He leaves with a body rehabilitated by thousands of keepy-uppies.
He has a meticulously curated data soundtrack of his own psychological evolution.
He has the geographical coordinates for Switzerland, planted by a golf legend.
And he is armed with an uncompromising standard of excellence instilled by Blue Eyes.
The isolation worked. The era had done its job.
Which means it is time to leave.
And the way he exits Spain is so visually striking. The era officially ends at an ice bar. The defining photograph from this night, the one preserved in his archive, is severely tilted. It's completely crooked.
And David specifically notes that he never bothered to straighten it in the edit.
Yeah, he said he left it crooked because he wasn't straight. And the world wasn't straight that night either.
Preserving the crookedness is a brilliant archival choice. You don't exit a period of profound healing and reinvention neatly. The disorientation is part of the process.
Right before he leaves the country for good, he makes a brief return to the coastal town of Sitges. And the universe hands him the perfect symbolic test.
The bike incident?
Nice. Someone chains his BMX bike to a lamppost. Now think about the old David. The guy fighting the corporate rules at Eli Lilly, the guy grinding it out in the Belgian bars. That guy would have fought for the bike. He would have found bolt cutters or waited around for days to confront whoever did it.
Without a doubt.
But the David, who has just spent 2 months rebuilding himself, he looks at the bike, realizes it's just dead weight, turns around, and boards the train to Switzerland. He literally leaves the heavy machinery behind.
In chess, there is a concept called a gambit. A gambit involves deliberately sacrificing your own material, usually a pawn, to secure a stronger positional advantage on the board.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
His entire time in Spain was a gambit. He willingly sacrificed the beautiful Mediterranean weather, the safety of his daily keepy-uppy routine, the familiar cafes, and the bike. He sacrificed that square on the board to gain a dominant position elsewhere.
And that new position was massive. He goes to Valais, Switzerland. He takes a high-level job at Lonza, which is a massive multinational biotech and pharmaceutical manufacturing company. He re-enters the corporate world, but this time on his own terms.
And eventually, he builds his own institutions, like Brayhan AI and Award Publications.
The departure photo at the ice bar might have been tilted, but his trajectory was dead straight. Barcelona didn't give him a final home. It gave him the structure and the confidence to leave it behind.
It was the perfect chrysalis.
It really was.
Uh,
So, as you are listening to this right now, think about the tools you use when you are standing outside your own empty stadium trying to rebuild. We all have our versions of the keepy-uppies or the playlists we lean on when the world feels too heavy.
We all need that scaffolding.
We do, but consider this. David actively curated his soundtrack, manually tagging and building playlists to map his recovery. We are rapidly approaching an era where artificial intelligence, perhaps systems similar to the ones David himself builds today, will be able to read our biometrics, analyze our location data, and automatically generate the perfect soundtrack for our lowest moments without us ever clicking a button.
It's a wild thought.
If an algorithm knows you better than you know yourself, and it perfectly scores your isolation, does it help you heal faster? Or does it trap you in the empty stadium forever, making the isolation too comfortable to leave? Take a look at your oldest, most emotional playlists this week. You might be surprised at the person who built them, and you might just realize it's time to finally board the train and leave them behind.